dear listeners, we present to you the full version of the story that you enjoyed. No matter what anyone says, no husband is ready to believe that his wife is unfaithful, especially the wife he loves. It does not matter. The husband always doubts to the last and is looking for excuses for the inadequate behavior of his beloved wife, frantically clinging to the slightest opportunity for her justification. Just a lot of reasons, such as work, a sick mother, chronic fatigue. You name it, we immediately jump to adultery. Well, an old high school friend came to visit, plumber, TV technician. We do not live in an airless space. We are surrounded by people, old or new friends, girlfriends. My wife is a human being too, and she has her own social circle. What now in her every male acquaintance do you see a lover? This is how the noble cuckold, crowned with branchy prize horns, reasoned with enthusiasm, looking for the slightest opportunity to explain his wife's changed behavior lately. Even when she is caught red-handed, some male creatures manage to find excuses for her. It's interesting that everyone around here knows very well that the wife is sleeping with another man, but is in no hurry to tell her horny husband about it. And not out of any desire not to traumatize the unhappy man. In our feminized age, cheating on your wife is considered a feat, and, apart from squeamish pity and contempt of the deceived spouse, cannot cause others. All the courts are on the side of the woman. The children will remain with her, and the property, at least most of it, will go to the former wife and therefore her lover. So the husband will be the last to know about his wife's infidelity, and to a large extent accidentally. My wife Michelle and I had already been married for almost a quarter of a century when I began to notice that my soulmate's behavior began to change. It's in general, a change in the behavior of his wife is not visible to the naked eye. Michelle began to dress up for work, under the pretext that she was promoted and she'd look at the level as an example for the subordinates. High-heeled shoes, lace lingerie, rings and chains, short dresses. Appropriately tinted face. Intimacy has become very rare. I had a headache or tired to the point of exhaustion, or some other silly thing comes up. Perfume changed without even asking if I like it or not. She didn't seem to care about my opinion. Thus already at this point, I should have thought about Michelle's strange behavior. But I continued to believe in her faithfulness and put all doubts to rest. Especially during our whole married life, she never gave me reason to be jealous. I must say that my wife was beautiful, that men would turn their necks when we walked past her, and Michelle loved it. She was flirting with her ass, not embarrassing me at all. I should have slapped her in the face or told her to be careful, or told her to be more modest, but I, like a jerk, wrote it off on a woman's nature. All the more, my wife reacted painfully to my remarks about her. I must say that at the time of my wife's transformation, we had an almost adult son. Almost, because he was still in university. But soon Daima was graduating from university and was going to get married. About a year ago, Michelle started going on business trips. At first brief, then she began to stay away from home for a month or two. marketing according to her. She was raising the branches of the company from the ruins where she had worked tirelessly. That's where I should have been worried. But no, I had my hands full. We too began to go on long business trips, and my wife began to see even less of me. I came home one day and my wife said, "I'm pregnant, already 6 weeks. What are we going to do?" What a twist. I scratched the back of my head. The children from God. Since I was not spared, we will give birth to a baby. My wife just looked at me with her blue eyes. She started getting tested. It turned out we were having a girl. Well, not bad either, especially since we already have a boyfriend. Michelle's pregnancy went well. The girl was healthy. Everything is good. But the closer the birth came, the gloomier my wife became. The character was completely ruined. I read somewhere that pregnant women crave intimacy, and the closer the birth, the stronger the dollar. In our case, it was the opposite. I became irritable. Intimacy was out of the question. Even my touch made her shudder and twist her face in a squeamish smile. 9 months flew by quickly, and one rainy autumn night, I took Michelle to the maternity hospital. By the time my daughter was born, I was 42 years old. I had some life experience. And by this time, I had already held a respectable post. I was chief engineer at the plant. When I got the call that Michelle had given birth, I was overjoyed. I really wanted to see the baby. I thought that with the birth of my daughter, my life with Michelle would go back to the way it was before, and we would have peace and quiet. And then came the epiphany. That evening, I got a phone call from a good friend of mine. He worked as an anesthesiologist at the hospital where my wife was in labor. He hesitated for a long time and then asked me what my blood type was. I, not understanding what he was getting at, said that I was a positive. "And your wife's blood type?" he asked. I sensed the tension in his voice. "Yes," I replied. "And what happened?" I asked. "Why do you ask?" My heart began to pound uneasily, and I sat down on a stool. You see, your baby is blood type 3 with a positive rhesus.
Very quietly, my friend said, "This just can't be. It can't be a third type in your baby. It looks like you're not the father."
Everything began to fall into place. Long business trips, delays at work, the desire to look good, refusing to have intercourse with me. She was carrying another man's child and was disgusted by even my touch. I am not the father. Neglected nature. It can't be helped. So what happened was logical. It had to happen sooner or later. Now it's my turn. I never understood that women are not constant, that they abandon old love without regret, thoughtlessly, cruelly striving for a new one. Yes, life seems to have taught me nothing. I had to make it through the morning. In the morning, I would go to the hospital and close this page of my life. I could hardly make it to the kitchen on my padded feet. I took a bottle of vodka out of the fridge and drank it all from the net. On the way to the hospital, I tried to pull myself together as best I could. I decided to have a quiet talk with Michelle before I filed for divorce. I had no doubts about this decision. When I got to the maternity ward, a nurse averted her eyes and invited me to the head of the ward. My heart once again rang in anticipation of new misfortune. "Hello," she said. "Have a seat." The pretty brunette made an inviting gesture. She handed me a piece of paper. On it, in Michelle's handwriting, was written abandonment. For some time, I was in a stupor, not understanding anything. "Yui," the mistress continued, "your wife wrote the waiver and left the hospital early this morning. Took her away."
Oh, sir, anticipated my question. That's all I know, she said. I know the girl is not your daughter, but you are married to her mother, and legally she's yours. Mother and legally her father. If you do the waiver as well, the girl will be sent to nursery. Oh, but the thing is, she's been diagnosed with a prolapsed heart. They don't live long without surgery.
The administrator corrected some papers on the table. "I, of course, will do everything possible, but we do not perform this level of surgery on newborns. Only abroad, and that's a lot of money. The only hope is that she will be adopted by wealthy people who can pay for the operation."
I'm shocked silent. I had nothing to say. And what is there to say? She was someone else's child. Why should I have any part in her life? After all, she has a mother and a father who don't need her, especially a sick one. Maybe death would be the best thing for her. "You're right," I thought. "Let me sign a waiver." I knew I was depriving the girl of her last chance. I don't think she'll be adopted anytime soon, especially if she's ill. I did not know what was more emotion, resentment against her mother, my wife, or the desire to end it all as soon as possible. I signed the standard disclaimer and headed home. In the face of my decision, Michelle's cheating had somehow faded into the background. Tomorrow I would file for divorce and forget my wife like a bad dream. "Don't lie, you won't forget," my subconscious whispered to me. I said goodbye to the doctor and headed for the exit. Up somewhere in the back of the ward, a baby was crying. For some reason, I decided that it was the little girl who had been deprived of the right to life, thrown into the whirlpool of life, cynically condemning her to death. My feet carried me down the white corridor. I walked toward the screaming, not paying attention to the nurse who tried to stop me. I stopped at the window to a spacious room. In airtight compartments, there were little toddlers lying in the airtight compartments. And only one baby was crying, as if understanding something. "Yes, that's her." I turned around. Behind me stood the supervisor. I looked again at the screaming baby. "Give me the application," I said. The doctor handed me the paper. I crumpled it up and put it in my pocket. "Can I take her back now?" I asked. "No, she needs an operation," the doctor replied. I'll get everything ready. But the money will be there," I said. "And who will fly with her to Germany?" the doctor asked. The doctor looked me straight in the eye. "I'll take a leave of absence. Prepare for the operation," I said, turning around and heading quickly for the exit. I already knew what I had to do. the manager named Natasha asked loudly about the name of the girl. My son was somewhat indifferent to his mother's departure and the birth of his sister. After some time, he got married and was very offended that I couldn't come to his wedding. I later found out that my son had found Michelle, and she was at his wedding with her husband. In our relationship with him, on the other hand, cooled, and our communication was mostly limited to holiday greeting cards. I sold my apartment and moved into the service apartment. I added money from the sale of my car, and the sum obtained was enough for the operation and rehabilitation period. Everything went well. I even managed to hire a nurse. So my daughter was raised on real woman's milk. After about 6 months, I switched her over to artificial nutrition. I went on maternity leave at work to take care of the baby. They valued me at the company and assured me that they would hire me back after my leave was over. For a month after the operation, I got a divorce. We had a quick divorce. Michelle did not come to court, but through a lawyer, she gave her consent and signed all the papers. Where her child was and what happened to him. She didn't know, or to be precise, she didn't want to know. So I was left in my arms with a small child. Raising a child alone is hard even for a woman. And here was a man. Of course, my mother helped as much as she could, but I had to do most of the work. As time went on, Natasha grew up. She started asking questions about her mother. I had to make up a story about a doctor's mother who wanders the world and treats little kids. I even wrote letters to my daughter on behalf of her mother, congratulating her on the holidays. I bought toys and mailed them to myself, as if they were from her mother. But despite my tricks, Natasha longed for her very much, though she never saw her. The daughter was gradually turning into a girl. That's how we lived. I had brief affairs with women, but I didn't take them home so as not to traumatize the child who was waiting for her mother. Natasha graduated from high school and went to university in the capital. Natasha bore my last name and thought of me as her father. She was already in her 4th year when Michelle came into her life. I can only guess what Michelle told her about me. But Natasha apparently forgave her and even went to live with her. Michelle lived in an upscale neighborhood in a bigger cottage. And it was like a holiday for Natasha to change her dreary dorm for such a mansion. My daughter wrote me a letter about all this. She thanked me dryly for my concern. But now she had found her own mother and no longer needed my care. I needed my care. 6 months later, I found out that Natasha had married some rich man. Apparently, her mother did her best. I wasn't invited to the wedding. A week later, Natasha called me. She screamed that she knew I wasn't her father, that it was because of me that her mother left, that I had robbed her of her mother's love. She said something else, but I wouldn't listen and hung up. I'm 62 years old and retired. I gave up my service apartment and went to my mother's hometown. There was an old house there that I inherited. So I decided to settle down there and start a new life. There was no particular need to work. I had money. I bought myself a car, a 20-year-old Suzuki. It was on a frame, which was the best adapted to our off-road conditions. I happily drove the old Japanese car, which was quite adequate for my needs. My friends would have been surprised to see me in an old, shabby SUV, considering what cars I could have afforded before. The wooden house I got, with 2 rooms and a kitchen, had been built in the early 1960s by my great-grandfather. I spent some money to upgrade it and make it habitable, a new green metal roof, a drainage system to keep meltwater from flooding the yard. I even fixed the old gasoline generator in the barn, so I wasn't threatened by power outages. I didn't get out to town much, just once every couple of weeks to stock up on groceries, send money orders, which was infrequent, and get the mail. I liked the solitude. These remote places were a good place to get away from the hustle and bustle. The silence, the wildlife that took my breath away. I had no intention of getting close to anyone. I was still human, but no longer part of humanity as a whole. The little things that consumed people's lives no longer bothered me. But my heart still ached with resentment. But I reasoned that I had done my duty to the child. I had raised her. I had taught her. What am I compared to her own mother? As an uncle, and a stranger too. After all, Natasha didn't ask me to raise her. I shouldered the burden myself. My daughter owes me nothing, and God grant that she will do well. I still remember her as a little girl who fell asleep in my arms with the words, "Daddy, I love you." It was late autumn. The rain was streaming down the dark streets, occasionally tossing handfuls of water through my window, which turned into thin streams and trickled down to the slopes. I sat on the old leather sofa, turned off the floor lamp, and listened to the music coming out of the old radio with my eyes closed. I had found a big pile of old records in the attic, and for some time now, I had enjoyed listening to music and voices from a past life. At my feet lay a big shaggy dog, the embodiment of my childhood dream. The memory of the past gradually crumbled away in my head. Leaving room for new events. For 2 years, Natasha had never contacted me. It meant that all was well in her life, and I remained alone. An old photograph of a little girl with a teddy bear, standing in an old wooden frame on the sideboard, reminded me of past happiness. Vaccinations, the record ran out. I turned it over to the other side and gently lowered the tone arm again. The tune that had long ago been forgotten by everyone began to play. And that's when there was a knock on the door.
Toward the front door.
Natasha? I saw her gaze stop on me, and our eyes met.
"Hi, Daddy." Natasha smiled guiltily. "Can I come in?"
I stared at her, frozen for a while. It is strange. She'd not thought of me as a father for a long time, and had made that clear to me in her time. "I am not your father," I said hoarsely. "You decided that yourself."
"You're my father," she said as she came into the house, "and always have been."
I looked at her. My heart was silent. At emotion, I repeated, "No, it's not me." "Whatever you say, Daddy," she said. "Whatever you want." as long as you sleep peacefully at night. I took a deep breath and closed the door. I went back into the room. Natasha was sitting on the couch, raindrops dripping down her leather coat. "What do you want, Natasha?" I asked. I changed from a girl I had taken to school. She had turned into a beautiful young woman.
So, you were there, Daddy? Why didn't you come over?
I shrugged my shoulders. "Stop calling me that, Natasha. I'm not your father biologically or otherwise. We both know that."
Really? I took my last name isn't yours? You weren't the person who taught me how to ride a bike. Who comforted me when my first boyfriend dumped me. Who made me smoke that pack of cigarettes before I threw up.
Who hugged me when I was scared and sang to me when I was sick. It wasn't all you. You see, Daddy, you never stop being my father, even when you're not around. It seemed as if Natasha was about to cry. You just sit there and you have nothing to say. What's wrong with you? You disappeared. No one has heard from you for 2 years. And here I am, and you have nothing to say. Mom was right. You're just a coward for life. I sat there very quietly. I didn't move a muscle. I just held onto the table so my hands wouldn't ball up into fists. You better just go, Natasha. I can see that nothing has changed, I said in a quiet voice. No, Daddy. Not until I understand what happened. You ran away. You just disappeared. Didn't you love me anymore? What happened? I know what happened to Mom, but you left her, Dad. You left her alone in the maternity ward. What kind of man does that? You made her give me up. She had no other choice. Tears streamed down her cheeks. As I recall, the last time we spoke, you made it very clear that you no longer thought of me as your son. You were very clear about your feelings about that, and you flatly refused to listen to me. As I recall, the last thing you told me was that Mom's new husband would be a better father than me. You were old enough to know that you were killing me with those words. You can't just come at me like that, call me a coward, and then make me throw myself into your arms just because you found me. You don't have that right. You gave it up 2 years ago, knocking the last thing I could stand on from under me. And you knew that when you did it. So screw you, Natasha. But to hell with you and your brother and your mother. I'm not your father. Obviously, I never was. I left for a reason, and they don't see anything different now than I did then. All you did by finding me was remind me of the past, and I spent a lot of time and effort trying to forget about it. Obviously, not enough. I got up and took out the papers from the secretary. Receipts for school fees. Take these. You can read them at your leisure. Now go away. Us all night long, sitting in a small room of a provincial hotel, Natasha read her documents, yellowed with time. More than once, she began to sob, wiping her tears with a handkerchief. According to the DNA test, Yuri was her biological father. This news struck her dead. She spent a lot of time going over the past in her mind and trying to compare what she knew and felt with what her father had told her. Except by morning, the realization of his life and what she was finally broke through. Natasha was on the phone with her mother, asking her uncomfortable questions. Most of the time, Siva dodged her questions, trying to change the subject of the conversation, which gave Natasha all the answers she needed. Then, she also vowed that her relationship with her mother would change. She was horrified at what her mother had done and what she had done with her thoughtless action toward her father. Her heart ached for her father. He had lived alone all these years, abandoned by all and above all by his daughter. She had no idea what she was going to do, but she was not going to let him go like that, not again. She deserved the pain in her heart, and he didn't, and yet he had carried it in him for years. She needed to make him see that she wanted to be his daughter and no one else's. When she reached her father's house, Natasha was struck by the desolation. She looked around, but didn't see the car he drove. Natasha looked around helplessly, looking for someone to clarify the situation. "Are you looking for a place to live, daughter?" A short old woman, apparently a neighbor, answered. "Gone." "Hello, where is the landlord?" she asked. "Did he say where he was going?" Natasha asked, her heart breaking. "No, darling," the woman replied. The girl stood silently, staring at the empty house. Natasha never saw her father again. She tried to find him for years, but to no avail. "I'm 70 years old now. My health has deteriorated noticeably. I sat on the old leather sofa, turned off the floor lamp, and listened to music with my eyes closed. The memory of the past gradually crumbled in my head, leaving room for new events. Yup. And at that time, there was a knock at the door. I pulled the handle and the door opened. Natasha. I saw her gaze stop on me and our eyes met. She threw herself on my neck and wept bitterly. Through her tears, she cried out, "My dearest and dearest daddy." She said, "I am so happy that I finally found you. Forgive me. I've been looking for you for a very long time, and my heart was just torn to pieces." I hugged her and tears just streamed down my cheeks. P.S. I am 75 years old now. I already feel that my life is coming to an end. But I'm happy. I now live in a big house with my daughter, her husband, and 2 wonderful grandchildren. My daughter has stopped all communication with her mother. She couldn't forgive her for her betrayal after all she had learned. Dear listeners, your support is very important to us. If you like our story, please like, comment, and subscribe. It's very motivating for us. We need your feedback to improve our content.